It's not every day that you get to check out a brand new Leica camera, but that day is today, because this is the new SL3 from Leica. They actually flew us out to Germany to test this out ahead of launch so we could get hands-on time with it. We're actually here at the headquarters right now. We've had a chance really to shoot with this pretty much all day non-stop. I've already filled up 2 cards. I'm onto a 3rd card. So it's a lot of shooting. We've been doing loads of different stuff, low light, out in the sun, using flash photography, portraits without flash, loads of different stuff. And this has been a great chance to really test this out. Now, the SL family of cameras is not exactly new, but it is one of the kind of newer ranges of Leica cameras. But if you're familiar with the SL or the SL2 or the SL2S, in fact, you'll be right at home with the way this looks and the way this feels. This is absolutely in keeping with what makes those cameras lovely to shoot with. But there is actually a lot to talk about here in terms of upgrades. It's kind of in some ways more, I guess, of an evolution in that range of cameras rather than crazy big new revolutionary specs. But the combination of all those upgrades and then what feel like really big quality of life things in this camera just make the shooting experience so wonderful. I just think either if you're coming from a previous SL camera or you're an existing Leica shooter, there are lots of reasons to get excited about this. And if you're thinking about getting a Leica camera, if that's something that you've thought about doing, this has got a lot of stuff that you're going to be excited about. So we've got a new sensor in here, 60 megapixels. Of course, you've got the triple resolution tech that we see things in like the Q3, for example, where you can shoot at 18 megapixels, 36 megapixels, or the full 60 megapixels, which is super useful for keeping file sizes a little bit smaller if that's how you want to shoot. We've got a new processor in the camera as well, which just makes everything faster, just work a little bit better, and it improves the ISO range, and it significantly improves things like noise reduction, which are really noticeable. Now, we did have a chance to shoot in some pretty low light conditions. I was quite routinely shooting at ISO 6400, ISO 10,000 with no problems, just no concerns. That is not something that I used to be able to do. With this camera, no problem. Not thinking about how I'm going to clean that up in post, not thinking I'm going to have to switch to black and white to try and overcome that. That's a big plus. That makes this incredibly versatile for lots of different situations. I've been shooting a lot with the 50mm f2, which is a wonderful lens, but even stopping down to f4, f5.6, I wasn't really too worried about it. I wasn't really too worried about that low light situation, and that's massively to do with that new processor. We've got better autofocus in here, so we've got a PDAF, we've got contrast, and we've got object detection as well. I've got to say, this seems to work extremely well. There's a new animal autofocus mode in here as well, which is going to focus specifically on animals, and it should work with birds. We haven't got any birds here, but that should work as well, and I can't wait to test that out with a longer lens as well. But things like the face, the eye detection seem to be just very, very good. And actually in scenes with multiple people, it'll now draw a box around all the people in the scene, and you can just use the joystick to actually flick between who you want to actually focus on. The camera will just do that for you. So shooting portraits was an absolute breeze. That was so easy. That's exactly what you want, right? To just be able to quickly switch over to the face eye detection system or switch back, and the camera just does a great job with the autofocus. With that new processor as well, we also now see a CF Express card slot in here. So CF Express Type B alongside SD card, that's UHS 2. And that's not the only thing that's new. While the camera itself looks very similar to the SL2 or the SL2S, the actual design has been changed up a bit. So we've got different menu controls, we've got different UI design, we've actually got different buttons on here as well, and an actually newly designed top panel as well. So the top LCD panel is slightly different as well. We've even got a new dial on the camera to control ISO super easily. So it actually gives you a really nice feel to how the camera controls with your 3 dials, one on the back, one on the top right, and then one on the top left, which is really nice. But probably my favorite new addition, which, it's not going to seem like that much of a big deal, but when you're using the camera, it's really lovely, is the new on-off button on the top left. Now, this has an LED ring around it as well, which gives you an idea of kind of the status of the camera. But it's just very, very nice. That's one of those kind of quality of life things that I think works so well when you have a camera upgrade like this. And I mentioned at the beginning, there's a few of those quality of life things that you really find in this camera. So for example, the touch screen now is usable throughout all the different menus, throughout pretty much everything is touch screen, or of course you can use the joystick. And I found myself very intuitively just switching between the two without really thinking too much about it. I wasn't deliberately thinking, oh, I'm going to use this like a touchscreen, or oh, I'm going to stick to the joystick. I would just actually flick between the two without really thinking about it. It makes it really easy to control. That's also true now of the tilting screen. Now, I know not everyone is going to be a massive fan of this, right? Because I know not everyone loves a tilting screen. Personally, I find it incredibly useful. It's probably one of my biggest issues with cameras like the SL2 is that it's just very, very handy to use a tilting screen, right? If you're shooting not from your eye, if you're not using the EVF, it's just useful to be able to shoot like that without having to then bend down like crazy or get on your knees. You can actually shoot much lower and actually be able to see like that. It's a useful way to do things. And I've got to say, of the tilting screens that I've used, it does not feel cheap or tacky or plasticky. Part of that is down to the construction of the camera, right? It's all metal. It's all magnesium, but it does feel robust, which I think hopefully remedies one of the reasons people aren't so keen on tilt screens. Yeah, very happy to say this does feel robust. And that's not even the only thing that is different with the screen as well. So we actually now have portrait mode in the camera. So when you switch to portrait, all of the icons change, everything changes round. It's all kind of integrated into the camera now. Much better for workflow. Overdue, really. If we're being completely honest, it's not the first time we've seen a system like that. It's definitely very welcome though in this camera. And again, just in terms of that workflow, it's just so easy now to be shooting with this camera. And actually, when I think about how it is to shoot with the SL2, this just feels miles ahead, right? I mean, yes, you've got things like better resolution, better autofocus system, faster processor, but the actual way it feels is so much nicer than the SL2. That's really impressive. That's really impressive to capture that and kind of integrate that throughout the whole of the camera. Still got a beautiful EVF. That's always been something that's really nice in SL cameras, and that's absolutely the case here. Still a lovely, comfortable feel to the camera as well when you're shooting. It feels like a premium camera, which of course you'd expect from a Leica, but important to note nonetheless. And a huge amount of this is customizable as well. So things like the dial that I mentioned before, the top left, that is currently set to ISO, and I think personally that's probably the most useful thing to have that set to. You can customize it to something else if you want to. If there's a different way, a better way that you want to shoot, you can customize it to control something else. That's also true of a lot of the menu icons that you can change to suit you better. So the way you want to shoot is now much more integrated and much more important in how the camera operates. And again, I think that's just a really nice thing. Leica are obviously listening to its fan base, to its customers about what they want, and giving you the option to decide how the camera's going to operate. I think in a lot of ways, that's probably the best case scenario, really, is that I like the way it's set up. I don't know that I'd change it, but if I shot for 6 months with the camera, maybe I'd find that there are certain things that I'd like to customize and change, and you can. I think that's really good. It's funny, actually, I've not even spoken about image quality or anything like that, and that's because we all know how good it is, right? It's going to be absolutely outstanding. There's just that's not surprising. I don't know if that's even interesting at this point because it's exactly what you'd expect from a Leica camera, but you know what? That is exactly what it is. The images are frankly, they are absolutely just amazing. They're just beautiful to look at. 60 megapixels gives you some extremely beautiful high resolution images. As you zoom in, it really is something else. It's just wonderful to shoot on a camera like this. And like I say, I could gush for hours about this. It's just not that surprising, is it? It's exactly what you'd expect, but it's lovely to see. And it really is stunning. The image quality is stunning out of a camera like this. It's not just the resolution though, it's things like the colors, the contrast. It's just very, very, very lovely. There's no getting around it. I don't know there's a better way to say it. It's some of the best image quality I have ever seen from any camera. It's also extremely fun to play around with some of the film modes in the camera. So actually in camera shooting JPEG, you can switch the film modes to things like monochrome, you can switch to monochrome, high contrast, you can switch to things like vivid. That's a lovely way to shoot and to actually experiment with the look of the pictures that you're getting from the camera. And shooting in JPEG like that, it's a really nice way to actually just straight out of camera, no need to edit, have some lovely, lovely images. I've got to say, the black and white, the monochrome, high contrast, yes. big fan of that. In terms of connections, of course, we've got Bluetooth, we've got Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi is significantly improved. It's 10 times faster than on the SL2. We've got HDMI 2.1, that's type A. We've got USB-C, which of course you can use to charge the camera. You can use that to actually charge the camera while you're using it as well, which is a great way to shoot if you're in the studio or something like that, or if you're shooting video. That's a great way to use it. Of course, you've got video functionality here as well. We've already seen that in the SL2. It does look really good. 4K, 8K. We've got different ways of shooting. I think most people are probably going to use this as a photography camera. I know I would. It's just too nice. As a photography camera, it's too nice. It's just how I think about it. But there is some really decent video functionality in the camera, as well as image stabilization as well, which of course we've seen before, but it really does allow you to shoot at a much slower shutter speed handheld without really worrying about it. So you've got lots of ways to overcome different lighting situations. And of course, for shooting handheld video as well, that's going to be really, really helpful. I mean, the thing is, I think the bottom line really with this camera is it is, like I said at the beginning of the video, the most fun I've ever had with a Leica camera. And I've had a lot of fun with Leica cameras in the past. This is just wonderful to shoot with. I don't really have any issues with it at all. It's difficult to find fault with it. I think Leica have done a fantastic job of kind of updating everything that, I mean, for me personally, I felt needed updating from the SL2. It's kind of corrected anything that I didn't like so much about it and made this into just such a fantastic shooting experience. I don't really want to go and give this back, if I'm honest with you. I mean, things just like the tilting screen and stuff like that, it's such a step forward, I think, in the way Leica are thinking about their cameras. You know, it just feels like it's embracing things that really need to be in certain cameras, right? We just expect them from certain cameras at this point. Obviously, it's not a new thing, a tilting screen, but it's great to see it in a camera like the SL3. It just means Leica are listening to their customers, listening to their fan base, what they want, what's going to be useful, and really then implementing that into the camera. You know, they've managed to do all of this while making the camera ever so slightly smaller. You know, it's not crazy. You're probably not going to notice it, but it is a few millimeters narrower, a few millimeters shorter as well, and actually a little bit lighter, which is pretty impressive. And like I say, it's the feel. It's really the feel of this. Now, you know what I'm talking about if you've shot with Leica cameras before, but the only way to really sum it up is a wonderful shooting experience. Whatever you're really shooting, you're going to have a wonderful time. Now, you can check out this new camera by following the links down in the description of this video. You can see the full spec, you can see all the fun stuff, all the details, everything you want to know about it. It's all down there. Just follow that link and you can check it all out. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well, because there's new content all of the time. I will see you in the next video, but until then, as always, thanks for watching.